Hello and welcome to the Grant Professional Association's webinar. This webinar is titled Using Keywords Across Multiple Databases to Find Your BFFs, Best Fit Funders. My name is Kelly Romero and I am the Membership Director for the Grant Professionals Association and your webinar moderator for today. You are placed in listen-only mode, which means that you are on mute so we can reduce the background noise. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to use the chat box on the screen to submit your questions. They will get to them as throughout the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, we will be taking questions, so you can have your questions placed in the chat box as well as raise your hand, and we can get your line unmuted so you can ask your question over the phone. At the end of the webinar, you will be directed to this brief survey. We ask that you please fill it out. This will assist us with our future webinar planning, as well as help Heather and Matthew with their webinar. Today's presenters are Heather Stombaugh, and she's GPC, and Matthew Stombaugh. Heather and Matthew are both members of the Grant Professional Association. They help serve on various GPA committees, and they help provide professional development to our members and non-members by presenting at our national conferences and our webinars throughout the year. With a combined 20 years of nonprofit experience and $26 million plus in grant money raised, we are very grateful to have both of them with us today to present this webinar. Heather and Matthew, please feel free to dial *7 to unmute your line and begin your presentation.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you everyone for joining us today for our discussion about using keywords in grant prospecting to find our BFFs. We're going to look at slide number 4 now for our learning objectives. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 databases that were identified through a national survey I did last year. We're going to compare and contrast some things like physical holdings, functionality, keyword utility, things like that. We're going to talk about how to use those keywords and Boolean operators to search, to conduct more narrow or much more expansive searches. And we're also going to look at some tools and practices you can implement that will make this process a little less daunting and help you track and organize your findings, both to track your search parameters and results, as well as to funnel those results into your BFFs. And to get started, we have a poll, and actually it's a big poll, so it's on 2 slides. So the first part of it is, if you subscribe to any of the databases that are listed on this screen, please click now on all of the ones to which you subscribe. And I'll give you about a minute or two to respond to that one. SDO is leading, with grants.gov coming in a close second. Grants Alerts is another high contender. Foundation Search for 4 people. FDO and grants.gov are tied neck and neck, and Grants Alert is about a third of it. So that's a lot of people, and this is actually bearing out some of the results from that survey I mentioned, which we'll look at here in a moment. Let's look at this second slide. Oh, there's your results. Fantastic. Let's look at this second poll, and here's another set of folks you may follow. If you would please, once again, click on the ones to which you subscribe, if any. A couple responses here. Lots of folks to, wow, GrantStation went from 0 to 17 in about a second. Chronicle of Philanthropy, and certainly GPA members are all on GrantStation's list. Grantsmanship Center newsletter is high up in there. GrantStation 28, Chronicle of Philanthropy at 18. So you can see a little summary of those results here. We have a lot of folks using a lot of these, and probably there's tons of duplication across each of those. So, and that is something of what we found in the survey that I conducted last year. And I am going to go to the next slide. Thank you everyone for your responses. I actually conducted a GPA webinar last fall on this topic, so this is just to summarize the findings from that study. We will pay, and our institutions will pay for high quality sources, but they are sometimes even too expensive for the smallest of organizations to access. There are other ways they can, but they can't always afford to be at their own subscription. The user interfaces are frankly not fantastic, and that's putting it nicely, on most of these prospecting databases. The options we have, even the best of the best, don't fit all of our needs. And that's a problem developers really need to consider and work on. But to me, one of the most interesting findings was that everybody who responded, from the rookie grant writer to someone who's been doing it for 30 plus years and actually considers themselves a trainer for prospecting, felt that they needed more training on grant prospecting, and in particular using keywords and advanced search techniques to find your right fits. So Matthew and I developed this webinar to address that gap from the study. On this next slide are the top 10 prospecting sources that were identified by from the group I surveyed. FDO is top of the list, grants.gov, foundation search. Other includes an amalgamation of lots of different entries people had, lots of the ones that you entered that weren't in the top 5 of even our small poll today. But all of them combined ranked 4th. Separately, none of them ranked in the top 10. 5th in this list is Grant Station, followed by Chronicle Philanthropy. So taking out other at number 4, we're going to look at today those top 5 specific funding databases. And to learn a bit more about all of those sources here, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew.
Well, thank you, Heather. Welcome everyone to the webinar today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days, which I'm sure everyone is busy. We are going to compare and contract the actual databases, the top 5 that Heather just stated. First, we're going to talk about searchability. Physical holdings, type and number of filters, keywords and functionality. Physical holdings being how much data does that database actually hold. Type and number of filters, geographic filters, area of interest filters, types of support filters, all those good things. Keywords, whether the database actually gives you the keywords or if you have to create your own. And functionality. Indexing actually differs from database to database. They use different algorithms to pull the data from the 990s and other documents. So each database is structured differently, and that influences the functionality of each database. All right, let's look at Foundation Directory Online. Obviously ranked one of the favorites by 4-to-1 margin in Heather's poll. 120,000 plus foundations, corporate donors, more than 500,000 key decision makers. I like Foundation Directory Online. They send out email blasts for free if you'd like to sign up for them, RFPs in certain areas of interest and geographic areas, such as if we're in Michigan and we want to know more about human services or veterans, they'll send us those specific ones. And there are libraries across the United States that have Foundation Directory Online access. So if you're a small organization and can't afford it, you can find out where the closest library is and still be able to use it. All right. These are the subscription levels for Foundation Directory Online. As you can see by the numbers, the professional and platinum numbers or levels are a bit high, and those can sometimes be out of the reach of small organizations. That's why we encourage them to reach out to their local libraries. All right, grants.gov, another favorite. And why? Because it's free. Just like FDO, they will send out blasts for RFPs for each government agencies, likely how most of you actually get info from grants.gov. You can also use their basic or advanced searching methods. And they did a giant overhaul of the grants.gov website. I think it was within the last year, and it is much, much easier to search. I'm very happy they did that. They provide assistance in applying to each type of funding source, and they allow for registration for organizations and individuals to apply for federal grants, of which I'm sure you are all aware. And this is just a sample of their actual search page. It's a lot easier to maneuver. It should be relatively simple, and we'll go more in depth in that in a little bit. All right, foundation search. Very similar to FDO. Heavy source. Like, a lot of information here. Just like FDO, more than 120,000 foundations representing billions of dollars. And their main mission is to help nonprofits efficiently identify, attract, and manage relationships to help fulfill their philanthropic missions. One thing they do provide is one-on-one tutorials prior to your purchase if you'd like to check it out and see if it's for you, if it's for your organization. They provide educational sessions, CFRE modules. Those do cost money, however. And a unique thing for Foundation Search is they only show grants that are over $4,000. So all the smaller ones you'd get in, let's say, Foundation Directory Online, those would be skipped by Foundation Search. They provide analysis tools to help you in your search, and they provide a 100% money-back guarantee. And this is from their mouths. We will refund your full license fee if you are unsuccessful in obtaining any funding approval from any of the sources listed in the Foundation Search and or Big Online within 6 months of the date of your invoice. That's a very big promise. They guarantee that you will find funding with Foundation Search. And this is just an example of one of their search queries. Excuse me. Their current rates for Foundation Search are, if you're just doing a 1-year subscription, it's going to be $3,995. But if you do a 5-year subscription, it would equal out to about $1,799 a year. So there's a significant savings over the long term if you decide to stay with them. They run monthly specials. They also run CFRE modules. You're going to get a lot of bang for your buck with Foundation Search. Grant Station, of which, if you are a GPA member, I'm sure you are fully aware of Grant Station. They are relatively low priced at $149 a year. It comes free with GPA membership. They contain a wealth of resources, LOI and proposal writing and revising assistance training, weekly email blasts just like FDO and grants.gov, and thousands of searchable funder profiles, and access to hundreds of online educational sessions each year, which cost money. And this is just a sample of some of their area of interest. Each term that you see up there, the arts, culture, and humanities, each one of those terms has between 5 and 25 different subcategories that are searchable, and we'll cover that here in a little bit. And then you can also search by funder name, keyword, geographic scope, and types of support. Sorry. All right, Chronicle Philanthropy. Not the same as the rest of them, not the formal databases we've been looking at. This is a low-cost, $79 a year. You can get it through your mail or your email. Provides news, analysis, trends, and tools essential for nonprofit success. It's a great source of information even if you're not subscribed. Unlike others on the list, this is very much like searching an Excel spreadsheet. It's not going to be huge. It's going to be worth it. And this is just a sample. They just show the running deadlines of the larger grants on the horizon. And this, if you would like to reach out and learn some more about each of these, I encourage you to contact their customer service, give them a phone call, or check out their websites, because they're valuable pieces of information. All right, I'd like to do a little poll. How much do each of you actually spend on database services each year? Oh, very nice. 0 to 1,000. A few. 2,500 to 5,000. Surprising. Wow. Very nice. A lot. 0 to 1,000. All right.
And I wonder if it would be different if we had included a category none, $0. If we could parse out that and I'm going to click on skip to results here. Look at parse out that 53% even further. So thank you, Matthew. That's interesting results, and again, most people in the survey I conducted did pay something for a subscription to some source annually, and then also used multiple resources. So lots of options, and thank you, Matthew, for covering those main options, at least that we've looked at in the last year or so since that survey. We're going to talk now about using keywords and Boolean operators to search those databases. So what we're going to talk about in this section is relatable to just about any database, and not just prospecting databases. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. So I'd like you to think about here, as we get started considering keywords. Sorry, there we go. If you would, you received a handout along with this webinar called the Organizational Summary Sheet. And if you looked at that, I can imagine some folks would say, Heather, you gave us a blank piece of paper, more or less. There's, like a question. It says, describe your organization. You could have literally given us a blank piece of paper and it would have been worth about as much. That's its entire purpose. This is a space for you just to sit and think about who you are and what you do. and begin to write out words, keywords related to that work. So if my organization has a mission to provide food and shelter to the homeless, there are there are hundreds of thousands of words you could connect to that concept. Adults, children, youth, adolescents, teens, homeless, homelessness, homeless prevention, transitional housing, supportive housing, and the list goes on and on and on and on, and I haven't even got out of homelessness yet into the food side of things. And what we're suggesting is that what we found to be very helpful is just to begin to write down all of those words. And then from those words, write down all their synonyms. Because more than likely, a lot of those words that you write down are going to be keywords within the databases, and they can make your searching much more focused, much more purposeful, and less time consuming if you write all of those keywords out in advance. If I was going to do, just as another example, if I was doing a search for fire and burn prevention programs for urban kids, it's a type of project I used to work on, we would use keywords such as burn, fire, smoke inhalation, smoke morbidity, smoke mortality, fire, same, injury, pediatrics, children, prevention, so on and so forth. So consider all of those types of keywords that are related to your subject area. That is the biggest category of keywords, but here are some others as well. Subject area number 1, types of support. What kind of money are you looking for and what kind of money do they give? Funders' geographic interests, and as most of you are probably familiar, each of these databases thinks about geographic interests differently, or they allow you to search in different ways. What type of foundations are we looking at, and what types of nonprofits will they fund? These are preset, at least if we look at FDO for instance, those are preset filters for indexed keywords. And I'll show you what I mean by that here on this next slide. This is for subject areas. If you've used FDO before, you're familiar with this look. This is from their subjects list, which you'll find on the left side of the screen when you're in FDO. And you can see, and these lists go on and on, they have hundreds of thousands of keywords. But I want to point out to you, under housing and shelter, for instance, it's at the bottom of that second column, there are 1,057 records attached to the term housing and shelter. That means that 1,057 organizations had used the term housing or shelter in their terminology to describe themselves, in their Form 990s, etc. And so there were enough people who used that same term that the database developers categorized it. That's what an index is, basically. And so we can search, that's how it's structured. We can search on that term. And as you can see below that, we have housing, shelter, aging, housing, shelter, alliance, advocacy. Those are subcategories, sub-indexes of housing and shelter. So if I wanted to do the most expansive search possible, I would search housing and shelter. That's 1,057 records. But if I was only looking for, let's say, the Toledo Area Alliance to End Homelessness funding, I can search for 5. There are 5 funders in the entire database who fund that activity. So that's one way you can use these indexed keywords to find subject areas that fit your need. And you would click on as many or as few at a time that would be conducive to your search. And you can. I've done it both ways, where I'll click on one at a time, or I'll lump them all together in one search and see what happens. And you do get different results. This next slide is about types of support. And this is almost the entire list from FDO. They happen to have the most expansive list of types of support. Some keep it really simple: program, operating, capital, technical assistance, capacity building. Theirs is quite broad. And it makes it nice to search for something like general operating support, which, as you can see, has 23,000 plus funders. But couldn't we also say that an annual campaign provides general operating support? Now I have 2,700 more funders. Wouldn't we also call that continuing support? Now I have 3,300 more funders. So depending on how expansive or narrow I want to make my search, I would include or take out those many synonyms for general operating support. And you can look across all of those categories and see lots of similarities, things that you could combine that really mean the same thing when you talk about spending the money at a nonprofit level. On the next slide is geographic focus. Again, this is from FDO. They have the broadest categorization of geographic focus. You can do it in multiple ways. You can search, if you're searching under grants in professional version, the grant maker search, you can search by state, the geographic focus that that funder has indicated they have. If you search under grants, the people who've received money, you can search by the county of the recipient or city of the recipient, the county of the funder. You can search many, many more ways geographically under that header. So those are some other options. These are indexed words that you could use to narrow your search. The foundation types, it's not a huge list. Again, this is FDO's list, and lots of databases don't even have this. They're different that way. For instance, I wouldn't want to include in my search, I would not want to see in my search results hospital foundations. Those are supporting foundations or operating foundations. They're not going to give me money right off. Those are collaborative enterprises that, if you've ever been on them, don't just come from soliciting a proposal or a regular sort of standard ask. So I want to eliminate them from my search. And so in this case, if I was only looking for community foundations to support my project, obviously I'd click on that. Or if I was looking for corporate or community or private, then I'd select a few other categories. Nonprofit type, this is an abbreviated list from grants.gov. They have the most expansive list of nonprofit types in their database. And these are probably very familiar to many of you, and you could probably recite the other eligibility list to me. This is helpful for especially those niche or much narrower type of search. For instance, we've done work with tribal councils, so using the nonprofit type as really one of the only indexed keywords that your only filter that you're using can yield a nice narrow result list. So think about what type of project you're looking for and what the best types of keywords to use are. Here's another option. We've talked about, basically this is from FDO of course, we've talked about really searching by fields of interest you see here on this slide, types of support, geographic focus, type of grant maker. Those are all these indexes, right? Down here what I've highlighted is the keyword search. And here you could put in words that aren't up in those indexes. So for instance, the word human trafficking, that's not indexed. The word slave is not indexed. So those are terms that if I wanted to address something, maybe I could use from in the field of interest line up there, I could use women or girls or terms that are related to the nonprofit's work and then add the term human trafficking down in the keyword search bar. And that would further narrow my search and find only those funders who've actually indicated somewhere in writing the term human trafficking. Another option would be we've done a lot of work with like adaptive equipment. Well, adaptive equipment is what some organizations call that type of work. So I could enter that there because there are funders who call that type of work adaptive equipment. But in FDO, the term assistive technology is indexed. So I could actually use both of those because they would likely draw different results depending on how the funder self-reported. Now we're going to get into some of the Boolean operators. We talked a bit about the indexed keywords. When they give you a list, click on the list. That makes it so easy. Now if I have a tighter search, if I want to tighten my search, or I want to expand it a lot, or I have this very specific need, you could use some Boolean operators. There are three commonly used terms, and, not, and or. And for those of you who, like me, knew of a search engine world before Google, they used Boolean operators. You had to use them. Google and most of the search engines today incorporate all of the operators within their own algorithm, so we don't have to type them in anymore. But if you remember that, you may be familiar with these operators from that time. And here's how we use them. If we use the word and, that means we're going to get both terms. So I'm looking for funding to support substance abuse programs for homeless women. Substance abuse and homeless and women. To simplify this, you could really go crazy with that, search, but to keep it simple, use the and, you'll get every term that's in that list. If we look at or, you're going to get one or the other. So like I said, human trafficking is not indexed, slavery is not indexed. I could even use the word slave there, and that would yield different results than the word slavery. So you could use or, and it's going to find either, because I don't know. Some people call it one or the other, and for many different reasons. There are funders who call nurses caregivers. They, in their own literature, choose not to call them nurses. They might reference nurses do the caregiving, but they prefer to call them caregivers. So knowing that, I could search that term in the keyword search line. Not is your elimination friend. So in this example, let's say we're working for a 2-year liberal arts college. The funders who fund my type of work at a 2-year liberal arts college are likely different than the funders who are going to fund U of M. And so I need to do a slightly different search, and in this case I really want to narrow it down, and I would use the not function, the not operator, to separate out anything that was solely for universities. So those are the most common, and, not, and, or, and you can get a lot of results and really refine and hone your searches using only those. Here are a couple more that you can consider. There are many, many, many more than we're going to present today, but here are a few that you can try. And they do work in most of the databases we're talking about. This one is about parentheses, and you can use, if you're familiar with using Excel formulae, then you can use the same concept here. It's written in the same logical way. So in this case, I'm looking for substance abuse funding for men or boys. That's really all it has to say here. So this search is going to find any indication when a funder has used the word substance abuse and the term man or the term boy. And so I could have added in here man or boy or teen or teenager or adolescent or any of the other iterations of the teenage years in that smaller parenthetical bracket there with man or boy. So that would be how I would tighten up a search and expand the target population. Another way you could do this, and I indicated this slightly when I said I could turn the word slavery into slave, and actually what I could do is turn it into SLAV with an asterisk at the end. And it retrieves variations on the words that you've used. So in this case, if I break house down, it's going to HOUS asterisk, it's going to give me house and housing results. So I could expand my search and look for anyone who's mentioned either iteration of that word. Home, you could go on forever with home as they're going to come out. In medical work that I've done in the past, the term BACTER for the front of bacteria or bacterium, that's a common one. So consider, are there words that I use like that that I could use an asterisk for to further refine my search. Okay, and finally, the apostrophes. So in this case, the quotations, we're going to use nursing research as our model. Nursing research is not indexed in FDO, but it is a particular field of grant writing and funding. So if I search with the quotation marks around nursing research, I only get 11 results. So I've significantly narrowed my search. But if I'm looking for some new potential targets and I want to further research other opportunities outside of that exceptionally narrow field, I could use nursing and research and get a very different set of results. So consider how you use those keyword search functions and these Boolean operators as you look for funding. This is just an example of how you can incorporate all of those things into a single keyword search. And so in this case, it's going to give me anything related to the root homeless, where they're funding substance abuse programs for homeless kids, basically, homeless teens. This is just for those of you who are in grants.gov a lot more than I am. I found this and I thought it was really interesting. They actually have a Boolean operators whole page dedicated to how their Boolean operators work. And as you can see, there are many more than we've talked about today, and I encourage you to look for those. If you use grants.gov a lot, become familiar with them, and you can really, really hone your prospecting skills in that particular database. So I have a poll for you. I'd like to ask you a question. Which of these Boolean operators have you used in the past? We've got all, and or, the asterisk. I like that one a lot. And. The and, not, and ors are winning by a lot. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback in these polls today, by the way. But yeah, and is winning a lot. And it looks like some people have some experience and others have with the three little words. Expand your utility of those in prospecting. And know, too, that you can use these same keyword search techniques that we just discussed in literature databases and other types of databases where you might need to get data for your statement of need. And I'm actually presenting a webinar with a librarian, Becky Daniels, in March on that very topic where she's going to discuss some additional advanced search techniques. So just if you're interested in further discussion on the topic, please join us then. So to talk a little bit more about how to make sense of all of this, I'm going to turn it back over to Matthew for our next section.
Thank you, Heather. Very nice poll. Yeah, I primarily use and or as well. A lot of those Boolean operators can be difficult, but once you know them for life, I think. All right, we are going to talk about constructing and tracking keyword lists for each database to find your BFFs. Searching across databases. Each database manages data differently. We spoke earlier about different algorithms, where they actually place things, what areas of interest they're using, what types of support they use to describe things. Each has different synonyms for similar things. The levels of indexing vary, as we touched earlier. The update frequencies differ a lot. You can have one database will update every 3 months, another will wait 2 years, depending on the frequency of the 990s they actually get. And that has a big effect on the data accuracy and the complexity of that information. Some have a list of keywords that's very small, but very defined, such as human services, humanities, etc. Others require your own listing of keywords, and that's where writing everything down, having your synonyms ready, having your keywords ready will be very helpful, while others, like FDO, have a huge listing of keywords that you have to search through to find the ones you need or the ones you can use. And this can be in the thousands. So it can be a daunting task. As Heather stated earlier, the synonyms can be simple or difficult to understand. Human trafficking versus slavery, deaf versus hearing impaired, blind versus visually impaired. Break out your thesaurus, be ready to go. Because once you have refined your search techniques, this will be a walk in the park for you. Something that used to take you 3 hours could take you an hour and a half, tops. Throughout this section, we will be going on as we are a child abuse intervention and prevention program. That's our example. That's what we are as a group. Let's try our first search. All right, let's prepare. Know your organization. Well, that's what we are, child abuse prevention and intervention. I'm going to make a list of keywords. Child abuse, family, crime, violence prevention. Heather, do you have any you'd like to put in?
Treatment, children, youth, family, mother, father. I mean, we could go on and on.
Yeah, this is just...
Go ahead.
Yep. No, this is something we do when we're trying to figure out keywords for everything. It's something that will become second nature. Make this list of synonyms. Write it down. Have notes. I have 7 notepads around my desk right now, and one of them is dedicated to making keyword lists. Use tools. Create your own or use the couple we've pointed out to you today. One would be the organization summary worksheet, which Heather already gave to you, and that would be where you could put the information, know yourself. And then the other would be the prospect worksheet, and that would be where you could write down the important information for the provider or the funder you're looking at. Their name. Where are they? Who do they fund? How much money do they have? What are their interests? Are they actually a good match? Should we call them? Should we send them an LOI? What do we do? It can be as simple as that. Save your results from each database. While they are different, they are close enough in likeness that you can use them going back and forth. Because this will save you a huge headache if you just save your results. All right, let's talk about searching FDO. We'll start our search, which is a child abuse intervention and prevention program. We're going to start our search in Foundation Directory Online. So we're going to look at the filters. All the synonyms Heather and I shot back and forth. Children, youth program, youth services, child abuse, intervention, prevention, crime violence prevention, all those things. Boolean operators. FDO will input their own if you're using their keywords from their list. If you're inputting your own keywords at the bottom, here I'll show you. If you're inputting your own keywords at the bottom, the keyword search section, you will have to input your own Boolean operators and keyword searches, and forward and reverse search functions, which I will show you. This page would be the forward search function. Searching this will answer the question, who out there, what funders might be interested in funding a need like ours, the child abuse prevention and intervention. And it could be as narrow or as expansive as you want. Heather touched on this a little bit ago. If I want to be a narrow search, I'm going to say, state, Michigan. County, let's say Wayne City, Detroit metropolitan area, Detroit metropolitan, congressional district. I have no idea. Zip code, where your zip code actually is. Fields of interest, child abuse, all those things. Types of support. I want to go for operating in some program development. Geographic focus, we want the funder to be focused on funding Michigan, because if you have a funder only focused on California, they will not be interested in funding Michigan. Trustees, officers, and donors, if you actually know of some in that foundation or out there in the world, you can put their names in. Then types of grant maker. Heather touched on this earlier. Operating foundations, community foundations, things like that. And then if you want it to be, just a large search, expansive, you can put state, Michigan, and the other things, and then search. One, you'll get maybe 100 results, the narrow search. If you go for the expansive one, you could have more than 700. It can be a lot to filter through, but you're going to get things in the group of 700 that you did not get in the group of 100. All right, the search grants function in FDO. This is the reverse search, and this answers the question, who has already funded a need like ours in our community? And you'd still put all the information in there. State, county, this is it. This is where we are. These are the types. You could search that, and that would tell you the exact funding that has been received for people like your own organization, like ours, the Child Abuse Intervention and Prevention Program in Detroit. All right, now we're done searching FDO. We got a bunch of good funders. Now we're going to go search grants.gov to get some government funding. Grants.gov relies heavily on filters. You can use the Boolean operators. Heather showed you that page a little bit ago. I suggest using that. And this filters by instrument type, nonprofit type, funding category, funding agency. And this is an example. Well, this is the search page for grants.gov. You'll see top left, keywords. That's where you're going to want to put your stuff. Child abuse, and then or and, prevention, and then use your Booleans in there. Funding opportunity, well, this is my initial search. I don't know what the opportunity is. But if you did know through some of the listservs that they send out, the RFP blasts, you could put in there, yeah, I remember, it was this one. And same thing with the CFDA number. If you knew it from an email, which I strongly suggest if you're not signed up for grants.gov emails, you should be. You could also put it in there. On the filters, you'll see on the left side of the screen, opportunity status. Obviously, I'm looking for funding, so I want it to be open. And I'm going to look through the funding page. The eligibility, I'm going to click on nonprofit, and I'm going to leave the category open and the agency open, because some of these agencies will do one-offs for certain things. Then I'll click search, and I'll probably get about 150 results just from that. Okay. When we look through that, we find a couple good ones, but we're still not sure. So we go on to the next one. Let's look at GrantStation. And GrantStation relies heavily on their filters. They filter by funder name, keyword, geographic scope, and type of support. I showed you the slide earlier where they had the 11 areas of interest. Each of those had 5 to 25 subcategories. And then something unique of GrantStation is they only allow you to search 3 areas or subcategories at a time and one type of support. And as you can see, it creates a smaller, more defined search. It makes it easier on the eyes. It's much more viewable. instead of thousands piling up on you, you can see 15. And those 15 are in your head, and you can use your project worksheet or your funder worksheet and write all the stuff down for them. We are the Child Abuse Prevention and Intervention Program, so let's look what I can click on here. All right, I'm going to click on, since I can only choose 3 of the top section, I'm going to click on Family, and I will click on Domestic Violence Child Abuse because that directly relates to our goal. And then I'll come down to Targeted Population, and I will click on Children and Youth. That'll be my first section. That'll be the 3 that I have to choose. And I'll come down here to type of support. You know, I'm looking for operating support, really. I mean, who isn't? So I'm going to click operating, and then I'll go. And this could produce hundreds of results. And whatever those are, let's input them into our database, our spreadsheet, showing these are the people that I've seen. These are our future targets. Let's at least look at them, make sure they match up. All right, we're finished with GrantStation. Let's move on to Foundation Search. You know, very similar to FDO, very expansive. This is going to be another large, daunting project. We're going to use the filters, very similar to FDO, Boolean operators, which Heather covered, keyword searches for reverse search functions, just like FDO, and geographic scope. All right, and this is just a quick example of the Foundation Search query. On top of these pages, they also provide 4 more pages of information per funder, and that'll be a granting analysis, a year by year per giving category, a new versus repeat recipients, who do they fund, have they funded the same person over the course of 10 years and don't fund anybody else, because that's important information, because you're not, obviously you wouldn't write something to them. And geographic distribution, where are they actually funding? And you get a lot of information out of Foundation Search regarding these things. All right, we finished up Foundation Search and all the others. We're just going to come look for some bigger national and regional ones. So we're going to come search the Chronicle of Philanthropy. Just like the others, it will use keyword searches, which we've already created our big list of keywords and synonyms and all the types of support we actually want, and where we're funding or where we need funding. And we're going to use one filter for subject area. So down the category, we'll click Human Services. And we can use a Boolean operator to search those human services. So keyword child abuse and family and prevention and treatment. Then we can click search. And we will come up with a few, not tons, because it's not a similar, it's similar, but it's a lot less complex as a database goes. So it will bring up all the national and the regional ones, and you can click through those and add them to your big spreadsheet. And then we will consolidate our results. And then, excuse me. And then we will take all of our keywords and all of the lists we've created over all of these 5, and we will put them into some sort of document. Be it if you want to do it on a piece of paper and just write it all out, that's perfectly fine. I use Word doc, so I always have the words I can just pull and search that way. I'd like to point out the search parameter sheet. We did this on a developmental disability organization, and these are all the keywords we used to actually search. All right. You'll see our results. We had 896 funding opportunities that we identified, and we found 151 best fits. And to get those best fits, you know, we found the ones that really, really tie into their mission. Let's say they want to fund the hearing impaired. They want to fund the children. They want to fund assistive technology. You know, they're in the area and they want to fund these particular things. So that's why we called those as best fits. All right. Do you have anything to add to that, Heather?
I do not.
Okay.
No. I think that I was just looking up something to share with everyone in the chat box, actually, and that's to bring all of this together, thinking about what's free out there, how do I use, and do I need to use all 5 of these or more? Should I be signed up for every free RSS feed or the server e-newsletter available? It just seems to me and most people, I think, that the amount of information available to us is a bit overwhelming. So as we look at all of these results, I wanted to just kind of bring us back together, and those are all that's how you would search all of them, but in reality, would I search all 5? Probably not. Sometimes for a particular type of search, like if I'm working for a local homeless agency, I might use FDO, grants.gov, and the Christian Funding Directory, which isn't even something we covered today. It's just to me a nice backup to FDO because of the way it's indexed. So there are also lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of free sources of information that are available to us. And that's the one that I was putting in this the chat box. And I think I'm going to try this. It's a list of 19 different listservs that we all subscribe to here at Just Right Solutions. And I posted a blog about it after a conversation we had last year, or the last presentation last fall. And there, I just popped it in there, and we can certainly forward that on. Kelly's done that before by email too, if you're interested. So with all of these sources, with all this great deal of information coming in from all places, how do we consolidate? How do we think about making sure these results are the best fit? We look for overlap, of course. Have they showed up in multiple places? Is it a funder I'm familiar with? Is it someone new? And how do I differentiate those? But we want to consider, as we look at any funder, matching our priorities. And these areas listed on this slide are the areas you should consider. I want to know they funded my area, obviously. That's the first thing we all look for. Fund what I do. They're giving money. They have a lot of money in the bank. They're giving a good proportion of that money away every year in the form of grants. They have a nice range of grants. They actually post that information. It's available to me. Their Form 990s are up to date. They meet on a regular basis. They have some kind of system. I don't care how informal it is, but they actually say something about how they are, how you can apply for funding. They don't make it too cryptic. And I want to know that they've funded things like what I've done. Have you funded it here? And when's the last time you did? Did you fund one of my partners? And if it was one of my partners, maybe we could get in on the act. Maybe we could enter in some sort of larger ask that's in collaborative in nature. Or maybe we don't necessarily, but they seem to give. They cast a big net with their giving, and we should be on their list. You know, for instance, if they give to the zoo and the library and the major university and the Museum of Art and all the major institutions of your community, but your iconic theater is not on that list, and it's an institution, you should be. And that's a message, just an argument that you can use, you can take with your results and consider. And what all these grant makers are looking for, of course, on our end is that we've done our homework, that we show that we have the capacity to actually find the right, make the right ask at the right time, that we have infrastructure, people, places. We're a credible ask. We have evidence to support our need and our solution. And we have evidence that you're the right funding fit. You are a BFF. And we know that because we've done our prospecting work. And that you're a sustainable organization, of course, because we did our prospecting work and we did it well and it was comprehensive in nature. I don't just have 1 or 3 or 5 funders. Here are 24 funders who are potential fits that we are going to begin to cultivate relationships if we don't have them already. So those are just some bringing it all together ideas, I think, for our group today. We are near the end, and so we definitely have time for some questions. We have a poll here, and I just clicked away from it. And this can start our question and answer period, which because we have the time, Kelly, we could certainly do the hand raise and open it up to everybody, the unmuting. Is that still an option?
Yes, it is. It sure is.
Excellent. So in this right now, to get us started in that vein, if you would, please enter what you're going to do differently, if anything, based on what you've learned in this webinar today. Boolean searches. Boolean searches. Redefining techniques.
Okay.
More forward searches. Taking a look at taking a look at GrantStation, and I wonder if that's a GPA member. I do, because I personally had never looked at GrantStation until about a year ago, and I've been a GPA member for more than a year. I'll admit that, and I hadn't looked at it as a as like because I had used FDO for so long, I'll state that bias up front. But now, having gone through this process in the last year, we've used lots of them. And they're all very different. They all have their weaknesses and their strengths. Paying more attention to how I'm searching, better refinement, using more operators, using handouts to formalize your process. I love hearing that. Matt would agree. I'm all about formalizing processes. I interrupted you, Matt. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Well, I think at this point I'm going to skip to results, and there 19 people have responded, and please keep sending if you have it, and through the chat box or elsewhere. Email is fine too. I'm going to switch to this slide, welcoming your comments and your questions, and I'll turn it over to Kelly to do that, open it up.
Sure, thank you. If any of you would like to ask a question over the phone, instead of entering it into the chat box, there is a button that says raise your hand. I'm pretty sure if it's a button. But if you do that, then I can inform you to unmute your line, and you can go ahead and ask that.
All right. If I can go ahead, and I want to answer Wendy's question, Wendy Merritt. What percentage of time do you spend prospecting on databases versus actual grant writing and reporting? I will tell you, the more you prospect, the less people you're going to be writing to, but the more defined and the more accurate your writing will be. I don't know if that makes any sense. So I would suggest
the better your asks are.
At least 20 to 25% of your time should be spent prospecting. I'd say about 20.
That's exactly the number I was typing in as you started answering Wendy's question. 20%.
You don't want to spend all your time doing the prospecting, but definitely spend the time necessary to get the results you need.
I'm going to tack on to that. Part of it is from a development perspective, prospecting for donors and gathering tickler information where you know people's children's name and you know people's birthdays, you know where they'd like to go to lunch. That's sort of where it all stems from. You need to spend a certain amount of time prospecting on those relationships, really. And it's not just digging up a list of results. It's then, all right, where are the more 990s? Where is the current word list? Where do those people work? There's more to it. But we do spend it's an average of 20 hours when we do a standard prospecting project for one of our clients.
It looks like Janet has a question. Janet, if you would like to dial *7 to unmute your line to ask your question, that would be great.
Hi, this is Janet.
Hi.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. Well, I've got a question. It's about geographic focus, but if I'm looking for funding that goes toward rural programs rather than metropolitan, is there a way to search for rural versus searching for a city, county, or state name?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's indexed in FDO, right, Matthew?
Yes.
The word rural is indexed.
Is it? Oh, cool. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Very helpful.
And of course, the feds love the term rurality.
Oh, yeah.
So if you were to type that into grants.gov, that'd probably give you a term. We work on rural projects. That's why I'm laughing with you.
I've never used that. That's a very helpful keyword. Thanks.
One thing I do during prospecting, if I'm doing a rural organization, I will always have my Google open. So let's say I'm looking at a foundation. I'm not sure where it is. I'll search exactly where it is in relation to my rural. So maybe it's 50 miles, and they're also a rural area. That's a definite ask, unless obviously they say we're not interested in funding outside of this area. But definitely always search exactly where the foundation is in relation to the ask.
Good.
Are there any more questions like to be asked verbally? Please raise your hand.
I'm chuckling here because we've had 2 comments already on rurality. Brian says, not rurality? Yes, sure. I love that term rurality is hard to say even.
I find the word rural really hard to say.
Yes. Other questions or comments, thoughts?
And also don't forget that if any of you do have questions that come up to you after the webinar, you can always email myself at membership@grantprofessionals.org, and I can get them to Heather and Matthew, or you can always, their contact information will be on the slides as well.
With that, I think if there are no other questions, like Kelly said, please do feel free to follow up and extend. You can reach out to us on the website, on any of these vehicles. I'm probably connected to some of you already on LinkedIn and our LinkedIn groups in the GPA community. So please feel free, always welcome to send emails too. We do have another question. Notice tabs on Foundation Search. Matt, go ahead. Sorry.
I believe I'm actually jumping back to that slide. I believe it's this slide, Marie, that you are referring. And this would be the extra tabs on the Foundation Search would be, there are granting analysis tools, a year by year per given category. That comes up as a chart. The new versus repeat recipients, that also comes up as a chart. I believe the tags, I believe you can tag it within Foundation Search. So it
like
will
you favorite it.
search. Yes.
Yeah.
It will save your search. Like, I'm going to tag this foundation because I think it's a good match. And it will show up in your tag list.
Aha! This is a great question, Wendy. I'll throw this out, Matt. We have a researcher on our 20-plus person development staff for donor prospects. How common is it to have a researcher for foundation prospecting? It's not something I've seen except in the largest of largest organizations I've ever worked with, which might be about the size of yours considering the size of your development staff. You know, I think it's more often tied within someone's job. So in my experience with organizations of that size, where, for instance, I work on a 3-person consulting team to a 20-person plus development staff. It's huge and all-encompassing. So in that case, I am the foundation prospector, and the list they have for donor prospects and my list are cross-referenced, and all of their ticklers about those foundation prospects, the individual donors who might be attached to those foundations, they've given that to me, and vice versa. We share tickler information. So to have an independent single person doing foundation prospect and that's all they do, I've never seen it. To have that person be also the grant writer or be also the donor prospect, yes, definitely.
Okay.
Matt, do you want to take the next one?
Yes. Janet, can you share a sample of how you save your searches in a Word document? And do you create a table or just paste results in a huge document? Saving searches for FDO is simple as selecting the organizations you want. There's a little check mark on the left side once you actually do the search, and then you can export the list. It'll come out as a big Excel spreadsheet. Foundation search, you can tag just like that. And then I'd use a spreadsheet to actually track each one. Let's say Chronicle Philanthropy. There's a few we're looking at. Let's just add those in the bottom after we've already done our FDO or foundation search. And it's not really a sample. It's just make sure you have that information. So if you need to, you can easily go find all the information. So let's say you want the foundation name, maybe a contact name, and the address, how much they've given, and what they fund. It can be as simple as that. And that could
we have a much more complicated one. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the grant prospect worksheet, and that should be with your tools.
And you could easily create an Excel table out of that into which you dump information, which is actually how years and years and years ago, that's how I started. I would find stuff, and then at the time my executive director had an assistant, and so the assistant actually typed it into this big donor database, and so that worked out really well in that case. For us, we do have a proprietary product that comes out of it, a gigantic spreadsheet, for lack of a better term, with lots of funding information about each of the results, both the big list and the much more precise strategy. So there's 100 ways you can do it, Janet, I think is what we're saying. Whatever is most purposeful and time efficient for you.
If you're doing searches, make sure you're saving your keywords. Obviously, you're going to save your search results, but make sure you're saving your keywords in case something happens, so you can just jump back in and do the same search and have that list again. Okay. I hope that answers. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great place. Janet says the FDO Save shortcut sounds like it's pretty helpful, and you could easily create your own tracking system simply by downloading from their stuff, get what you need, and manipulating that spreadsheet to your advantage.
Now, Janet, I know it depends on how many you see. Like I have ours set up. We do subscribe to FDO. I have ours set up so we see 100 different results at the same time. And if you're doing a large search like that, I suggest going to the 100, and then I'll select all if I still want to keep them all, and then export the list.
Lots of utility in there, and in Foundation Search. All of them have different,
yeah.
but
they all have the really, really good parts. They do.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it's 3 o'clock, so we don't want to hold anyone over. I don't see any new questions in the chat box. And do you have any hands raised, Kelly?
No, I do not. Looks like everybody has their questions answered for right now.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay. I appreciate that. So that concludes our webinar. We'd like to ask each of you to remain with us a few moments longer and complete the short survey that you do see on your screen. Take a moment to evaluate the webinar and provide us with topics for future webinars. Heather and Matthew, we'd like to thank you for your time for presenting this wonderful webinar. Thanks to all of you who attended. Don't forget that all GPA members do receive different discounts and free access to different search engines. One of it being GrantStation, you do get that for free, and then Grant Navigator PE, you get that for free. FDO, you get a 10% savings on. It's an exclusive savings available only to GPA members. And then Grant Spy is a free trial, and EfficientGov is a new searchable online database that you get $400 off on.
Wow.
So those are what are offered for GPA members. You all will receive a recorded version of this webinar in your email later on this afternoon. And again, we're glad that you can join us, and we hope that you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Matthew.
Have a great day. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.